doesn't fit, then I bring it back.
I do want to let everyone know the meeting is officially being live streamed.
Oh,
So
all right.
we're ready to.
And in case anybody's watching, they're curious, I've got 1 foot in each house. All right. Well, let's wait for the,
Yes, but I just want to let you know we
Superintendent to
are
come
ready to
back.
go whenever you're ready.
very nice. So if for anyone who is online, would we know if somebody's online watching?
I won't know who it is, but I can tell you that there are people watching.
Are there people?
There are nobody's watching except myself right now.
Very nice.
I'm watching myself.
There are people watching.
And it'll be just archived. So.
It stays on our
Very
YouTube. Yeah, lots of people play that video.
Well, hey there. Hey, so we.
We haven't officially called the meeting to order, but I'm
Are we
seeing.
still muted? Are we muted?
We are not muted.
Well, then,
That's-
so we call
okay,
it
so-
order.
All right, Chairman, thank you very much. I'd just like to call the meeting to order. And Jacinta, would you mind calling the roll?
Sure, Chair. Bill Strostrom,
Present.
Rodney Hammond,
Present.
Carolyn Cummins, Paul Mitchell.
Here.
You have it, co-chair.
Thank you very much, Jacinta.
Move
Judge and
the
Superintendent.
agenda.
Second. Very nice.
And I got one thing to discuss about the agenda, which, by the way, when we get to item 8, formulation of committee recommendation, I got to remind everybody I can't participate in that.
Very nice. Yes.
So that's a statutory restriction.
Very nice. Thank you for pointing that out. We have a motion and a second without objection. Should the agenda approved. Item 4 is a time for general public comment.
We have one public comment here. Okay, great, thank you.
Why don't you come, I was gonna say, or you can just come to the table.
Okay, okay. I get to sit with the adults. This is exciting. I can't believe you're already talking about next year's millage rate again. It seems like yesterday that you were doing it last time. I just want to remind you something that you already know is that if you keep the millage at the existing rate, it is a tax increase. You can tell this by the numbers from the property appraiser, and by state law, it is considered a tax increase. I highly suspect that the property appraiser's numbers are going to be even higher when he does the final numbers. That happens fairly often. Because the property values have really increased a lot. And I don't know, have they appraised the Amazon warehouse yet? I don't know. So anyway, but when property values go up, that doesn't mean that the taxpayers have more money. And when you start thinking about where to set the millage rate, I just want to remind you to think of what's going on in the lives of the people who have to pay it. Things have changed a lot in the last year. All you have to do is go to the grocery store and the gas pump, and you know that people are struggling. There's even prediction by some that there's a possible recession. We don't know that yet. And if these numbers hold up and you keep the property tax at the existing level, you'll still have almost $8 million. And if you target your spending and award grants to the highest performing providers, I really think you can accomplish a lot. I was frankly a little disappointed last week that the appropriations that were made were not targeted, and that the grants were not awarded to the highest ranking organizations. I mean, the highest ranking got it, but it dropped down to organizations that ranked what when I was in school would be considered less than a C. So I think perhaps maybe the everyone gets a trophy mindset might need to be put aside and target. And that means some people won't get funded. I mean, some organizations won't get funded, but your job is to move the needle, and you've got to be targeted to move the needle. So, and y'all talked about this at previous meetings, and the public is expecting the needle to move because during the political campaign, the advocates were frequently quoted data from the Department of Health and Department of Education's website. So that's the data that people want to see moved. So I think you can really do it if you spend smart, and y'all are smart people, so I know you know how to do it, and just think of what's going on in people's lives. I know people who are even thinking about leaving Leon County because the cost of living here is so high. In fact, I already know 2 who've already left, for that matter, just in the last year. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And you were welcome to stay at the table. Jacinta, is there anyone?
Very well.
Very nice. All right. All right. So item 5 is the review of fiscal year 2022-23 budget development timeline.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair. So we did not provide a copy of that. It is in the previous 2 board packets, but I will go over those dates here so that we have them on the record and for those who may be.
And so before we jump into that,
Yes.
and this is kind of a sort of piggybacking on something that Emily mentioned, and from a earlier today, I had asked for a phone call to be set up with the property appraiser's office because very much in keeping Emily with some of the things she said, were in the back of my mind. I was mentioning earlier that I'm moving from one house to another house, and let's just say that the house I'm leaving is currently assessed at $100,000, and the person who's buying it from me, it will be assessed at, we'll say $200,000. Wow, that's $100,000. And here's the reality though, is that it won't show up until January next year. So we're really looking at data that comes from January of this year. So really, that's when they do their assessments. Even with the fact that you've got all of these new sales that have been going on, the value, what the property appraiser's office said is that the volume of sales is actually going down because there is not enough product out there. But when they're selling high. So we are going to see an uptick. What's happened over the last couple of months, which has really been, as far as I can tell personally, where the peak has happened, we'll recognize next year. They expect somewhere a little more than 9% higher our assessed values in Leon County than they were last year. To your point is, if we just leave it exactly as it is, we are going to have more money coming in. From a timeline standpoint, that January 1 is how the timeline begins, and on June 1, the property appraiser does sort of an initial assessment and evaluation, and then on July 1 they begin to sort of fine tune it, and then October they essentially lock things in. There's a period where as taxpayers, property taxpayers, we can protest what our property has been evaluated at, but based on the folks at the property appraiser's office, historically, it doesn't move the needle even. even slightly. I mean, it comes down to 2 or 3 properties actually making it through the process for consideration. So, we're essentially done in October. We know what it will be in October. But when I look at last year, the June, July, and October numbers, we brought in more than we were anticipating. Not by a huge amount, but a little bit, a couple $100,000, which, by the way, if it was in my checking account, it'd be a huge amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it isn't, big picture isn't a huge amount. So no matter what we do as we begin to, put our budget together, we need to recognize that we were probably going to bring in a little bit more than even under the best guesses we're anticipating. So go ahead, now, Sika.
Oh, no, thank you for that as well. And that call was really helpful, and we'll be sure to reach back out to the team to let her know.
Yeah.
It helped us out. Also with that, since I am not new to the trim process, but new to having to engage in the trim process, Jacinta and I both will be participating in trim training offered by the Department of Revenue. So I think ours is on Monday, and then they have the second one that, depending on what I hear on Monday,
Mr. Hammond,
I may get in
so happy that I suggested he participated in that trim training last year. Very challenging.
I've already warned Sika.
Pay close attention.
Yeah, I've warned her to bring lots of caffeine.
Yes, so we will be caffeinated for sure. So just to quickly go over the timeline, so today we're having our first budget and finance and budget committee meeting to just discuss, give kind of an overview of what projections are and maybe give an initial thought on where we want the millage rate to be. We will have the first council discussion on budget and trim at the June 16th meeting. And just by way of reminder, at 1:00 is the workshop on the needs assessment, and our meeting will start at 3. So that will be on the agenda there. We expect to have the draft budget approval and the trim schedule approval on July 21st, which is that governing council meeting. And then we will give that information to the property appraiser's office, which is due by July 22nd. And then I will give the final update on trim and the hearings and where the council is settling on August 18th. I did miss one thing, I'm sorry. Before we leave today, this committee needs to decide whether the next committee meeting will be June 23rd or June 30th. So that will be the time when you give your final recommendation for what you believe trim should be to put forth to the council. So now let me go forward again. So right now, on a preliminary basis, we're looking at our first trim public hearing to be on September 8th, and then the final hearing to be on September 22nd. But we need to make sure that that final hearing comes after the final valuation. What's the date? I missed. Yes, the county and the school board.
Everyone
we've
is
done
on the
that.
school board, yes.
So we have ensured that our last hearing date is after Leon County Schools, and I think theirs is the 9th. I'm almost sure it's the 9th. So that's just a quick overview of that schedule. We will again put that in the packets on June 16th to keep that in front of the council.
And to make things a little easier on Judge, you and Superintendent, from a budget standpoint, we now know essentially from an administrative cost perspective what we can anticipate. So really, as opposed to where we were last year, and it was all kind of guessing, where we are this year is we sort of know what we can expect in terms of overhead and just your basics. So what really we will sort of be deciding as a council is how much do we want to spend on programs? And nobody really has any magic answer to that. So that it sort of falls back to how much do we feel comfortable collecting, right recognizing that, that there's a lot of needs in this county. There just are. And where is that comfort level? I think that, Ms. Fritz has made a good point, and certainly is one that's shared by a lot of people. And that is, things are getting a little tight. They're getting a little tight. For those people who maybe bought a more expensive house, they would have anticipated their property taxes, now maybe not the Children's Services Council, but the property taxes being based on the sale price of the house. And that's just kind of part of the reality so I'm less worried about those folks. I'm more worried about the bulk, the vast majority of people who are sitting in their home and things are getting a little tight. And just wanting to be sensitive to that and weighing that with sensitivity to the needs of our community and what the council was established to do. Again, to Ms. Fritz's point of moving the needle one way or another in a positive way, we hope. So our focus really, it's kind of simple in that regard. Keep costs down from an administrative standpoint as much as we possibly can, and focus all of our attention on how much money do we need to collect to meet the needs of the community, and specific to children and families with programs that are not currently being offered.
Yeah.
If I could throw just one more thing in, and I think to your point, Chair Mitchell, it will be important for the council to contemplate which priority to really put that funding behind and focus on, to see that needle move. And I too think that is, Ms. Fritz's point is well taken, especially from our conversation with Gina this morning, and I am a property owner. In fact, all of us here are. But really, for the council to contemplate our priority areas and where we want to concentrate that work in that priority. Now, it could be with more than one RFP in that priority, but I just want to put that out there. And I think also that helps us be in a good place to keep administrative costs at bay, because if we monitor those priorities, that means we can also better monitor staff time and staff needs for that. Because I am truly not in favor of just increasing a staff for the heck of increasing a staff, but rather it goes along with the work that is being done, the priorities that are being pushed forward, and the work that comes with that.
Is the final needs assessment, what is it?
June 16th.
June 16th, all right. So hopefully that will inform discussion as well.
And
Again, talking about how we spend money, I don't think there's anyone in this county who believes that there aren't really important needs that need to be met, and money goes a long way to helping meet those needs. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes. So we can't do everything. Even if we had unlimited taxing authority, we still couldn't, tax our way out of these problems that we're facing. The conversation that, at least as a putting my budget hat on, that we had at the last board meeting, it was such a healthy conversation. I really do, and I hate saying this is the first time we've gone through this RFP process of awarding awards to folks who submitted proposals. But it is. And the next time, we're just going to get a little bit better. The same way this time, we really know what to expect in terms of when to receive money and how much is it going to cost to run a Children's Services Council. With every time you do something, you just get a little smarter and a little bit better. And I think we all learned, one, the importance of getting funding on the street and putting our best foot forward. And it's our first step at funding programs. So I think we are going to. The second thing is our first major expense was that needs assessment. Now, Judge, to your point, when that final assessment comes in, we're gonna kind of know.
Have some more information.
Yeah. I know that the numbers, Holly, that you ran are the projections of, I think it's $21 billion is the roughly 21.424.
Give or take.
Yeah.
More or less.
What's 400 million amongst friends?
Right there, that one right there.
Yeah. Well,
That's the June 1st number.
So if we said the 21.4 billion is the number we need to start focusing in on. Again, it will go up maybe a little bit between now and October when they actually send the bills out and start collecting money in the beginning of November. But if we just say to ourselves, $24.1 billion, we can multiply that by $500,000 and we can multiply that by $0. All of that, and anything in between is an option. That gives you an idea, just quick math, of what we can expect as a council in terms of what our budget could be. The nice thing is we didn't overspend in the first year. And I think it was the superintendent's point to me that whatever we assessed this past year, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go back into general revenue. It doesn't get swept. It can move forward and we can continue to use funds that we were unable to use the previous year for bigger programs if we see one that's successful. So I just think, you can do your math to yourself, but $500,000 or 0.375 mil or whatever it's going to be, when you multiply, $21 billion versus $19 billion, there's a good bump if we just left it alone.
So what number are we on?
On the agenda.
On
I think we're on 6.
So
It's-
we're somewhere between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Mitchell has got me so turned around now. I'm trying to figure out what that's. Are we on this past year's timeline? Are we having
No.
this discussion now?
Oh, no, we're on
So
the
we've already done
timeline.
the timeline, and we are kind of between 6 and 7. So discussing the current millage rate and how we've done with that.
And so is
looking at-
our objective is to then report our recommendation as far as the millage rate is concerned to the rest of the board members, right?
Right, so this is just
So
the
this is
first
just a
discussion.
conversation we're
Yeah.
having of what our initial thoughts are
Right.
moving forward
Right.
for the coming year. Can you, and certainly respecting what Ms. Fritz said about our current economic situation in the country and the state and the county, can you tell me how much money after we dole out the 1.5 million or 1.6, whatever we gave out the other day, how much money we have left?
We will have right at 3.5 million. Right at 3.5,
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
maybe a
more.
little bit more.
So if you took that 3.5 and added it to the 7.6, you're at $10 million, which we would raise if we increased the millage rate to $500,000, right? So if we left the millage rate alone, given the economic conditions of what's going on right now, we would still have the $10 million,
Yes,
right? Which would,
Except we're going to do a fund,
you doing fish fry or?
there's going to be a funding round in September, right? We're planning to do a second round of spending.
well, it probably will be closer to October.
No, what I'm saying is the money we spent was a one-time deal.
Right.
1.5 is a one-time deal. It's not a recurring anything.
Right.
Moving forward, I would assume the programs we are going to fund are going to be recurring expenses. It's not going to be just a hit and get, right? And so if we just left the millage rate at where it is, added the 3 million that we rolled forward, we would basically have the 10 million as if we would increase the millage rate to
We
0.5.
increase the millage rate.
So I think to me, that's
For that year, for the next fiscal year.
correct. And then, to me, that's the question. Do we recommend, if you move it any, you increase taxes, right? And even to her point, just property values went up, so it's
Right.
considered a tax increase. Like we have, even if we reduce our local required effort, if property values increase more than the reduction, we have to advertise it as a property tax increase.
Right.
But if you even went to 0.4, people, you raise taxes again. Here we are, blah, 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 right? The perception. So just my initial, and this is going to shock Mr. Mitchell, but my initial thought is leave it alone, roll to 3 million, which gives us 10, which is just like what we would have if we were at 0.5 anyway. And then if we knew we committed to $10 million worth of funding, the next year we need to move it up to 0.5 for those recurring expenses.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the millage rate because I'm prohibited from doing that, but I'll beat the gong and beat over about how proud I am of us for what we've accomplished. Like Ms. Fritz said at the beginning, it's astonishing to me. We're back at this process, and the year goes by so fast. And apropos what Mr. Mitchell said, which is that, boy, did we learn a lot in the blistering pace of that first procurement that we did, and this is a learning experience. This is a learning experience is all I'm going to say. And we did all that. We got that money on the street without even getting we got a lot of information back from QQ and from the preliminary gap analysis that they did and all of that stuff. But we still are just getting the needs assessment done. So anyway, I think the bottom line of the whole thing is I'm following exactly what you're saying.
And it actually doesn't, Superintendent, shock me at all. I think that the 14 months, if anybody wanted to see really good government in action, I think about these 14 months and where we've all just kind of gelled. I think are respectful of one another's positions. You know, you have definitely dragged me to your side on certain things. And that didn't shock me about me, and it doesn't shock me about you. I think we work well. We are not, I don't think it's our job to bring a recommendation to the board. It's our job to bring information to the board and hope that they have this kind of a conversation. And Holly, what you've done is incredibly helpful in terms of making the numbers, like making them clear. Again, basing this on the $21.4 billion evaluation. And also that all of this is the $10 million that the superintendent speaks of. If you go forward 1 year, and I think we're still on 7, maybe we're moving, but if you go forward 1 year, in our conversation with the property appraiser, they let us know that the property valuations go up every year between 3 to 5%. 4% was the number that I've always had in my brain, and so we, collectively are sort of bringing that forward as a good number. You're going to have 2021s again, where there's a 9%. You might have a couple of 2008, 2009s, and so just assuming that we're going to be going up all the time is crazy thought. And we're not South Florida, so we don't go up 35%, drop 35%. Leon County sort of just kind of slowly goes along. But I think the numbers, and I think these numbers reflect a 4% increase.
Starting with
Year after
fiscal year
year.
24, yes.
So Superintendent, to your point, if you kept things the same and we just continue to build, we put our reserves aside, so we always have, money set aside in case something happens, there's a need that we can't meet through our budget. And we build on the $3.5 million. It's actually, I think, a little bit more, but the $3.5 million that we have left over from this year. We just keep rolling that forward and recognizing that there may be a 4% growth, there may be a 2% growth, there may be a 6% growth. Our budget will continue to grow. So if we are worried about ever shocking the system by raising our millage and raising our funds because we have these long-term programs that, are recurring funds, we wouldn't need to worry about it because candidly of doing it right the first year.
And you can also, if I may, Mr. Chair, you can also see in that row that is labeled annual reserves and then rolling reserves, you can see where we'll be using that 4%, where we will be. And then we can at some point have a conversation about if we are at a point where we're ready to stop putting things in reserves so we don't end up with too much.
Well, more in reserves than we're
More in reserves than we're spending, yeah. But we're not there yet, yes.
What number are we on now?
Focus.
So given what Chair Mitchell has said, we had moved to the formulation of a committee recommendation.
I kind of like where the superintendent was heading. I don't want to make a recommendation. I mean, I will, again,
I am not participating in
Okay.
recommendations.
I don't even know that you can, technically you don't have a quorum if he's not participating.
Right, because the quorum there, so it feeds into just what you said, but we will be having that discussion. And when we call on you to give that report, you absolutely will talk about that and how you want to bring this forward for the council to discuss.
Right. I mean, I want to make sure that just because we're the committee, I think there's too much weight given with recommendations from a committee, just from an ease. If 10 of us, 9 of us can have a conversation about this, and then it's easy. Then it's easy to build a budget around that. Because at the end, they just have to make a determination as to what amount needs to be collected. We can do the subtraction real easily for them of what it's going to cost to run the CSC for the next year. And that leaves them that amount of money plus the $3.5 million that's been not spent to fund programs for the 1 year, with the idea that we would like to make many of them recurring.
And then because of the resolution, for 2 years, there won't be any occupancy that will come, that will be factored into that admin cost, because with the resolution that you all passed at the last meeting, we are pulling that funding out for the occupancy and putting it in escrow to satisfy the lease. So that's money that will not come out for 23 nor 24.
Right. It just, but that would have been money that would have rolled
Yeah,
over.
but
if it
It
doesn't,
sounds good.
how you pay your bills is how you pay your bills.
It sounds good for me, and it works for me.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I think at the end of the day, $10 million is with us still not knowing what programs to fund. I love her, but I don't want her to come back. She has a good point. She'll bring others next time. We still haven't even finished identifying. I just don't want to go through they're raising taxes again. They still don't know what it is they want. They still don't. And it costs $100 to fill up my car and gas, and the pump just finally quit. It wouldn't even pump any more gas. It got to $100 and just stopped. Right? I mean, so the pain is real for a lot of people right now. And I think financially, we're in a good position to do some good work and make some decisions. So we're curious in the future, but I think we can accomplish it without
Did you say rats?
the wrath.
Rat? I think so, rats.
Not a rat,
We
it's not a rat.
got you.
No, you know what I mean. I mean, but, and all good, and I mean that, Carrie, I would never, but,
Sure.
again, I think it's the right thing to do for, for everyone involved.
I think that brings us to item 9, review of budget development.
We have a public comment.
Not so fast. Oh, public comment. Let there be public comment.
We have a public comment for Cable Norris Barber.
It was not spot, you always try to put something in my mouth. But anyway, actually, some of the comments that I was gonna make, you guys have already touched on them. Rollback rate. So rollback rate is the rate that gives you the same amount of tax revenue that you would have gotten in the previous year. If you go to the rollback rate, that's effectively reducing your current millage rate. And they tell you, now, from my experience, you would be hard pressed to raise that millage rate again. So I would just caution that you might just want to hold it constant, because people don't get in a big uproar if the millage rate is held constant. As a matter of fact, the county commission, the city commission, the school board as well, they brag about the fact they haven't raised the millage rate in 100 years, but we all know that the increase in value is actually the result in an increased millage rate. I was going to comment on the thought of having hearings, but you touched on that. The school board is always in first position. I don't know why they get to be safe, the favorites, but they are.
Repeat them. Because we need them.
To Ms. Frisk's point, part year assessments. I'm a former budget director for the county, and I fought like crazy for part year assessments. So part year assessment, that's what Mr. Mitchell was alluding to, that properties don't go on the tax roll until the following year. But you mentioned the Amazon Center. If we had part year assessments, then you could assess part of the year, but in Florida, they don't have part year assessments, so it won't go on your tax.
He's right. That was my point of,
Amazon gets a free year?
they don't get a free year. What they will pay the property tax. I have no idea what kind of deal they got at the county, so I don't want to say that. But they get, let's take Amazon aside, the person who's buying my house for more than I paid for it will pay the property tax that I was required to pay in January. So apply that to Amazon, however you would like.
When you guys start talking about expenses in terms of staffing, I have watched these street people over the last, I don't know, 6-7 months. Boy, do you need staff. They need support. And I would strongly encourage you to give them the type of support that they need to do what they're going to be doing, because right now, they don't have that huge workload, but next year, in the following year.
I'm not sure that's true. You didn't see them put that procurement out a month ago. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Then on reserves, I heard 4%, but I would strongly encourage you guys to decide what that optimal amount of reserves are. If it's in terms of percentage, you can consult some authority that says, oh, this is what we recommend. The GFOA has one, a whole bunch of other organizations, like the county government, school boards have a national organization up there, right?
By law, we have to have at least the 3%.
And just so you know, because ours is, this is conversational, and I think that's healthy. Our reserves are 5%. The projected growth that Holly put together in this chart its projected growth is 4% year after year.
Yeah, I looked at it.
And that's where
They
that
constantly 4.95%. But I didn't know whether you guys had the conversation about leaving them at a certain amount.
I can just comment, the investment committee is going to be bringing forth a recommendation. We've just put it on hold since we've been a little busy. In terms of how they will be making a recommendation, in the coming months about that 5% and maybe when do we want to stop based on best guidance from the city have consulted with us, the county has consulted with us and all of that. So that's what you kind of see in the gray. Basically, this document is the same document that the investment committee is looking at as well.
Right.
When that investment committee decides to reconvene. So I just, there is a policy for 5% reserves, but we'll be making a recommendation for investment and kind of rollover of where you want to get to for your cushion in essence and then stuff. So sorry, I didn't mean
And I have a curious question. And I don't know this. Does the council have one?
No.
No, explicitly not.
No. Okay. Now they talk about reserves. Let us not make the mistake saying we have all these reserves and we're going to fund programs that we don't get into a situation where we're trying to fund recurring expenses from reserve. Yeah, that's really a problem. And Mr. Mitchell, most budget officers will only allocate 95% of whatever the property appraiser says that your tax revenues will be. Now, in effect, Rocky, what that does, that gives you somewhere in the area of 4 or 5% that's going to be dumped into your reserves every year anyway. In Florida, you really don't have to worry about whether you're going to get your property tax revenue because by this time of year anyway, they're selling tax certificates. And they're going to collect most of the money that you or I didn't pay. And then 2 years down the road, if whoever holds those certificates decide that they want to call for a tax deed sale, they can. And they sell it, then they get a little interest, and then you still get a little bit more money. 7 years down the road, well, all that property will go to the county. So if that happens, you don't get anything, but the county gets the property. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at 8, bleeding into 9, the review of the recommendation is 1, we don't have a quorum, so, and I don't think we should I think we should make a recommendation of how the conversation should go. We've received public comment, the approval of the committee recommendation is just that, right? So a review of the budget development. Sika, can you kind of walk us through?
Yeah, so what we will do and what I'm planning on doing, Holly and I are planning on doing is we are going to look at doing a very preliminary budget with what has been said here today. So staying at the current millage rate, budgeting at 95%, which is required by statute. And keeping it at a high level like we did the last time, not getting into the weeds of the operations, but rather what are those large buckets? And then have that ready for an initial review. Probably we'll have that done by the next meeting, June 16th, just to get a jump off point for the council to look at.
Can you do me a favor, and if between now and the 16th, we could have the gentleman's name who's the CPA or accountant?
John.
Okay.
Yes.
Could maybe the 3 of us get together and drag Jacinta and Ollie in on that as long as they've got some availability? Just so that one, when I'm presenting it, it's in a format that I'm used to seeing, and 2, I want to make sure that we have it in a couple of different formats. So everyone has, you'll say the same thing, but you can say the same thing and present it in different ways. So that it, based on someone's question, I have a different format that I can.
Understand, we'll point to the right column and the right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's perfect.
So we will work with your schedule, John, myself, Holly. So we'll just all have a nice little.
I'm ready.
Okay.
And so that, committee member comments, Judge?
This is a great committee.
Well, hold on one. Because we skipped one, next meeting.
Next meeting,
So-
Dave, you start too.
Yeah, so can we pull out our calendars and see if June 23rd or June 30th?
Oh, you did say that.
Rocky, should we get with you? Okay.
We got nothing to do, right?
And we will check.
Yeah, preferably June 30th. I won't be in town on the 23rd.
Cool things. And so we will check with Commissioner Cummings, because we're going to need her here to be able to do, if any kind of vote comes up.
So let's review the next, we go back. When is the general group meet again for the
16th?
16th.
At 1 o'clock, the needs assessment is gonna present.
1 o'clock is
right?
needs assessment.
3 o'clock is the
Workshop.
meeting.
3
And
o'clock.
then do we talk about millage then? Right, that's the discussion then.
It's the first
Right after
opportunity that
they
the
get the
full
information
council.
about the needs assessment.
Yes.
And I think it would be helpful that if you would reach out, Sika, to each of the board members, so they're anticipating the fact that we're not asking for a vote on it.
Right.
We'd like to hear their thoughts, and we're going to provide them some information that will help formulate their
Absolutely.
thoughts. That's
Right. I'm
Okay.
sorry. You'll vote in July. I should have
Right.
reiterated that.
So this gives them the opportunity to talk. We can take all that talk and kind of bring it back to build a budget.
Right,
Yeah.
so we'll build a budget, and then when you meet on the 30th, we'll review. So we'll have a draft for the 16th, we'll key up the discussion, have all that discussion, take any input from that. Team will go back, make the adjustments to the draft budget. When we come back together in this committee on the 30th, we will look at that, make any final changes, and that will be what you're proposing
Right.
at the July 21st meeting for final approval.
Right.
As soon as that July 21st meeting is done, we will make the calls to the property appraiser's office and get them the information, because they're gonna have to put the trim notices, as we talked about, and those have to go out to all homeowners. Once we get past the very last trim hearing and on the last millage rate. So the first trim hearing is the draft millage rate, the proposed millage rate, public comment, discussion. The second trim hearing, this is the final rate the council has decided on. Any input on that, but by that time it is the final rate, and the resolution will be signed at that meeting. Then we will present that budget to the county as defined in statute.
Right.
And we will have accomplished our trim process.
You can always reduce it, but you can't raise it.
Hmm?
You can always reduce it, but you can't raise it after that first
After
public
the-
hearing.
Right, right.
They're not reducing.
Although I don't anticipate.
Don't count on that.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have our decision. Okay, all right.
So 30,
So the 30th is
30th
what
is-
we will shoot.
And the
to
next
meet.
meeting
And if we could
agenda,
meet here, that would be great.
I will not be here on the 30th.
That's okay,
because you can't vote in.
because you can't.
I
vote.
can't. I am a pilot plan.
on the 16th.
Potted plant?
The 16th, you'll be able to, well, you won't be able to share.
We won't be there on the 16th.
We don't know that
You
yet.
don't know that yet? Okay, we would love to have you on the 16th.
Are you able to comment on?
I can comment on spending money, I can't comment on the military.
Oh, my God, okay, all
It
right.
says, I built up on the language again, it says,
Right.
judge shall not vote or participate in the setting of ad valorem. taxes into this section. I've got a JEA's Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee opinion about that. So.
Okay, so the next meeting agenda, we will
Review the draft budget as revised
on
from
June
the
16th.
June 16th meeting. And make your final millage rate recommendation.
Right. Again, I'm hoping that if you talk to each one of the board members individually and encourage them to begin thinking about and share with them the numbers. I don't want it going this far out in terms of fiscal year, just very simple columns of here's how much we would collect, here's how much we collected this year, here's how much we would collect if we leave the millage rate exactly as it is. Here's how much we would collect 0.5, 0.25, 0, everything in between.
Okay.
Those are the things that I want them to see before the meeting so that they can begin.
Sorry, did you say 0.25, like, so going backwards too?
Yeah, just give, again,
Yeah.
I don't want to sort of prejudge where other people may want to.
Yeah. So we will do that. We will not show the other columns. Again, this was originally developed for the investment.
Right.
And so it's good to see it, but it's a lot of information.
Yeah, it's confusing, like, should we worry about that? And the
Yeah.
answer is, to the council, no, you should not right now.
So, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
No, so we will do that. We will also have that ready for the meeting with the CPA.
Great,
So we'll have that ready for that meeting. We will get that meeting arranged.
great.
We will have a draft ready for the council meeting, and we will ensure that we have touches with each of the council members, except for Judge Miller, who will be the replacement, so we won't talk with him.
No such thing as replacement.
He also will not be participating.
He is the new.
Judge member.
Yeah, Judge
Judge
Member.
member.
Just
Judge
no
member.
replacing the.
So we'll do with the 9, but,
So help me.
Oh, no, I just got the joke. No, he's the replacement. Oh, let's be kidding.
There's no joke.
come on with this, Judge.
So on the 30th, the superintendent, the commissioner, and I will. Can Judge Miller talk about the budget itself?
Sure, he just
Okay.
can't talk about the military.
Okay, so we are going to put together a budget, and much like you will work individually with each one of the board members to let them know what we're anticipating them talking about at this coming meeting, the same thing with the members of this committee, so that everybody has, because we will have met with the accountant, they'll have some real numbers that they can look at. So you're not like walking in going, you're just showing this to me and now you want to vote on it.
And one other thing too, the judge member won't be a member of this committee. I'm only a member of this committee because I'm the chair.
Yeah,
right? So
you may not choose.
you won't have a problem child on the committee after I'm.
So,
So I mean,
so the nominating committee meets, it's amazing how it's all interrelated.
Yep.
The nominating committee meets on June 9th. At that point, they will put forward a nomination for chair and possibly a nomination for vice chair.
Right,
That will come to the June meeting and can be voted on at the June meeting.
right.
The changing of that guard will happen there, and whomever the new chair is
Will
will
sit.
join this committee.
If they're not already on it.
If they're not already on it. And if they are already on it, then we
used
need to
thinking
appoint
things through.
possibly another person.
Right. I got you. Okay.
Say again.
I was wondering.
So we've got the agenda for the next meeting, I think.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I'm clear. I just want to make sure that all members are clear
Is
on
there something you want?
where our agenda is going to be for the next meeting and the action steps that will happen prior to that.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure everybody is clear.
I just want to make sure that everybody that will sit on this committee ultimately
Has the.
has the information so that they're not walking in blind and just not prepared. I mean, it's just not fair to ask somebody to spend 10 million of somebody else's dollars without preparation. Okay, so now, other than, this is a real swell committee. Judge, do you have any final comments?
No, that, just, on the spending side of the, budget, I very much look forward to seeing the final needs assessment, very much look forward to that discussion. And, last thing I'll be doing on the, council is, hopefully we'll be set up to continue to make good impacts for the kids of the community. Been a privilege.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your leadership, Judge. I mean, really from the beginning, from the very beginning.
It's been a highlight of my professional life, I would say.
Couldn't have done it without you. I mean it, I sincerely mean that. Thank you. You've kept us all on task, kept us focused, included the community. And I think you did a great job of balancing the baby stages in our infancy, nurturing this thing in now to a young toddler, right?
Yes, it's time.
Go bounding off, but I just can't thank you enough.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
I think we're all philosophically kind of aligned. More right now than we were maybe at this point last year.
Yeah.
Given the situation we're in financially, the monies we're rolling forward, the financial conditions of our economy, what people are faced with. Hopefully, everyone in our community will be very supportive of what we're putting forward.
And Mr. Mitchell, if I may, because I believe I can put this in the record, because I was able to have a conversation with Commissioner Cummings. It just hit me when I was looking at Superintendent Hannah. I was able to have a conversation with her, and she also is in favor of moving things where they are as far as the millage rate. So I'm going to put that into the record, because I did have a chance to just have a preliminary conversation.
So kind of in keeping all of this in mind, Liza McFadden has mentioned on numerous occasions her desire to go beyond taxing and finding ways to raise money sort of the old-fashioned way, earning it. And that is something I wholeheartedly support. And I don't know what we as the budget committee can do to assist Ms. McFadden in her goal, other than to say we're with you. I don't know if it means baking cupcakes and selling them. I don't, whatever it
I thought
is.
she had in mind more grant writing, and I'm not, and well, the speaker's point, I'm not sure we've got the staff to do an enormous amount of grant writing. And then, of course, you end up in the discussion about how big do you want the staff to be? So it's tough.
We have had, if I may, Mr. Chair, we have had some discussions with Councilmember McFadden on the grant side, and definitely understand the ability to do that. She has agreed to sort of take the lead on how we look at maybe larger grants that we possibly could try to apply to receive. I really like Superintendent Hannah's analogy of where we are as a council, because I use it with the team all the time. So we're not crawling, but we are walking and kind of holding the furniture as we walk around the room. And we literally had to kind of put that conversation on hold as we moved into this RFA process. We have so many ideas and want to move in so many different directions. We just have to really pace ourselves and make sure that we are taking care of the lion's share of what we're supposed to do first, and then be able to move into those spaces. So we may not be able to look at grant writing well, I know we won't this fiscal year, by September 30. But hopefully, as we get our priority moving for the fall, we can look at that and move into that space.
I throw it out because I don't ever want to forget it, because I think it's a really great and important idea. The second thing I would tell you is that the resources that exist in this county are probably stronger, especially in this particular vertical for grant writing, than in all 67 counties. The 2 years I spent as chief of staff at the Department of Education, let me tell you what, there's some brilliant people over there. And just like all of us who are doing this on a volunteer basis, those are people who love their community, and trying to enlist some of them in their off hours may not be a bad idea. And we don't always have to apply for grants from government. There are large private foundations that you can apply for grants from, and they're really great grant writers over there. I mean, it's been several years since I've been over there, but many of them are still there, and I'm sure they've brought on even better ones. So we should tap into maybe somebody at the district and somebody at the DOE, and there's people in the EOG and legislature that could probably help if we just ask. So, all right. That's it. I'm so used to looking to Judge and Chair. I'm like, Judge, you might want to wind this thing up. We are adjourned.